Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal addressed the media today to brief on the contours of the India-US interim trade agreement, calling it a landmark step for India's economic growth. Highlighting the potential benefits for exporters, MSMEs, farmers, fishermen, Goyal described the agreement as a key milestone in India's journey towards Viksit Bharat 2047, emphasizing on job creation, strengthened trade ties and opportunities for innovation and investment.
लिए अवसर एक्सपोर्ट सबसे पहले तो हमारा लक्ष्य है कि द्विपक्षीय व्यापार अमेरिका और भारत के बीच $500 बिलियन यानी 45 लाख करोड़ रुपए का द्विपक्षीय व्यापार हम अमेरिका के साथ आगे चल के देखते हैं। इसमें सर्विसेज भी हैं, गुड्स भी है और मैं समझता हूं बड़े पैमाने पे अब हमारे निर्यातकों के लिए अवसर खुले हैं। अब हमारे निर्यातक इसका बड़े से बड़े तौर पे लाभ लें, ऐसा मैं उन सबको अपील करता हूं। रही बात क्वालिटी की, मेरा मानना है आज भारत की क्वालिटी दुनिया में उत्तम क्वालिटी का माल होता है। आपने देखा है माननीय प्रधानमंत्री ने क्वालिटी पे कितना जोर दिया है। 2014 से ही जब उन्होंने प्रधानमंत्री का देश को सेवा करने का पद संभाला, पहले से ही उन्होंने क्वालिटी के ऊपर जोर दिया। उन्होंने कहा था भारत जीरो डिफेक्ट जीरो इफेक्ट जेड के मूल्य पे चलेगा। हाल में ही उनके मन की बात जो 2 हफ्ते पहले हुई थी रविवार को, उसमें भी माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने क्वालिटी पर बल दिया। पार्लियामेंट का सेशन शुरू हुआ, उनके पहले दिन के उद्बोधन में भी उन्होंने क्वालिटी का जिक्र किया और परसों ही राज्यसभा में माननीय महामहिम राष्ट्रपति जी के उद्बोधन पर जो धन्यवाद का प्रस्ताव था, उस पर भी जवाब देते हुए माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने बल दिया कि भारत की क्वालिटी और भारत का ब्रांड सर्वोच्चम होना चाहिए, बेस्ट होना चाहिए, दुनिया का फेवरेट होना चाहिए और मैं मानता हूं हमारे निर्यातक बहुत बेहतरीन काम कर रहे हैं इसमें।
And Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal said that the deal would significantly benefit Indian farmers, micro, small, medium enterprises, artisans and labor-intensive sectors as well.
Leadership of Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, they have come to a very fair, equitable and balanced agreement which will slash US reciprocal tariffs on Indian goods to 18%. Additionally, 0% tariffs will be given on several products like generic pharma, aircraft, components, auto parts, etc. Massive potential will be opened up for Indian exports in the world's largest economy, the $30 trillion market, providing opportunities for our MSMEs, our farmers, our fishermen, our youth, our women, and the very talented and skilled people of India.
And Goyal said that agreement has been structured in a way that protects the interest of Indian farmers and the dairy sector. These sectors are sensitive, they're critical to India, and they remain protected in the deal as well.
इस प्रकार से हमारे किसानों के हितों का संरक्षण किया गया है।
However, when asked whether India will stop purchasing Russian oil, the Commerce Minister said that while the White House has announced elimination of additional tariff imposed on India for the purchase of Russian crude oil, Piyush Goyal said that Ministry of External Affairs will give more information on whether India will continue to purchase Russian oil or not. Remember, in the past, India has made it clear India is a sovereign country when it comes to making its own decisions on where it wants to get its oil and energy from, and it will exercise its own discretion when it comes to foreign policy. Joining me on the show is Dr. Jayan Das Gupta, former ambassador to WTO. Sir, thank you very much for taking time out. I know you've been speaking to us since this morning today, but as and when more clarities emerge, I think we heard there the Commerce Minister really laying out the broad contours of the deal, apart from what was already mentioned by the way of that joint statement that came early in the morning. A lot of questions there have now been firmly put to rest when it comes to India's agri-sector.
Yes, indeed. I think it has been made clear that India has not made any very significant compromises in the interests of its dairy or agriculture farmers. So that is positive that these vulnerable segments have been protected. That is one thing. The second point is that there is increasing clarity on what has already been conceded, and that includes, of course, cosmetic products, wines and spirits, and a few other sectors. So these, and of course, medical devices, which have been mentioned. So these did figure in the joint statement, not cosmetics, but the other two. But there is greater clarity now. Of course, it will depend on the kind of reduction of tariffs which will take place as a result of negotiations between now and March, which I think is some kind of a deadline which the Indian government is setting for itself to conclude the interim trade agreement.
More clarity will, of course, come in when it comes to American-made products and what sort of tariff will they invite in India. However, US President has made it very clear that India is going to levy a 0% tariff. So it will do away with tariffs and non-tariff barriers as well when it comes to US-made products. By the way of MSMEs, sir, and that's where we heard Piyush Goyal also focusing a lot on how Indian exporters and MSMEs are going to get a leg up compared to other South Asian countries. In your assessment, what sort of bilateral trade are we looking at? I know that the vision is $500 billion in the next 5 years. Does that number look attainable to you? Could it be more than that number?
As the figure of $500 billion includes services as well. And we are already at about $190 billion in terms of goods and services bilateral trade. So it is just a question of doubling that in the next 4 years or so. And I think that is quite attainable with the kind of market access that is being thought of from both sides. So, and especially if oil purchases from India shift away from Russia to a large extent, and part of it goes to the US. Of course, India will retain its right autonomously to buy from whichever source is the cheapest and most attractive. But the Americans
I have
also.
to ask you on that, sir, because I fail to see any clarity emerging. Even with Piyush Goyal, I think he's passing the buck to Ministry of External Affairs, although it's all about commerce after all, as to where our state refiners are going to purchase crude oil from. And India has made it clear again and again that we will continue to diversify our supply chains. We will continue purchasing whoever gives us the cheapest possible oil. But, the White House statement this morning mentions that India has made a commitment. Now, there is nothing to suggest otherwise. I mean, there's just so much lack of clarity right now as to whether we are going to keep buying Russian oil or not. And just to state the figures there, we bought over $50 billion worth of Russian oil in 2024. That number, of course, is going down because there's no more discount anymore on Russian oil. So if anything, India will diversify its supply chains based on market forces and not under pressure.
There is one thing which needs to be borne in mind, and that is that India has bought US oil also in the past on a competitive basis. And I am told on good authority that the crude oil prices have to be, that's just the major component. But there are two other very significant components. One is the freight cost, of course, and the US suffers on that count because of the distance. But the third point is about the cracks. The downstream distillates, which also are byproducts of the refining process. And all together, you have to calculate, depending on the complexity of the products that can be produced by a refinery, as to which is the optimum price at which you can buy. And for different refineries, it is different. For instance, for the most sophisticated refinery and the largest one in India and the world, it could be country A, but it could be on a particular day country B or country C. So that decision will be left to the Indian refiners as to which source to buy from, depending on the prices prevalent on a particular day.
So we'll wait for more clarity from Ministry of External Affairs as well as to what the final communication between the negotiators were. But my last question to you, I know exporters in India are going to get a leg up. It's a $30 trillion market open for Indian exporters. Which industries, in your understanding, are going to benefit the most?
The labor-intensive sectors like textiles and clothing, as you know, about 28% of the textiles and clothing exports till 2024 were headed towards the US. So it was our largest market, and approximately $10–11 billion worth were being exported to the US. Now that has suffered very significantly because our main competitors like Bangladesh and Vietnam for garments, and for textiles, Pakistan and other Vietnam itself, and a few other countries, they have had lower duties for the past few months. So a lot of business has
Sorry to cut you
diverted
short.
toward them.
My question also, stemming from the fact that recently we've heard Bangladesh has signed an agreement with the US, but the contours of that agreement will not be out because there's an NDA there. Is there a chance that perhaps Bangladesh has got a sweeter deal compared to India, which will again make our textile less competitive?
If we are going to see 18% for ourselves and 20% or 19% for Bangladesh, the details of Bangladesh's trade deal are not known, and it's also not known whether they have indeed got a trade deal with the US, because their chief advisor Muhammad Yunus was speaking to the press, and he said that at this juncture we must have a deal with the US, but whether they have got it or not is still uncertain.
That they have got a deal, and both sides have decided not to disclose the contours of the deal and to what extent Bangladesh will be tariffed. I think it will be interesting to watch out for whether India remains the least tariffed country in South Asia. At least that's what we're knowing. That's what we know for now. We don't know what sort of deal Bangladesh has got. But thank you very much, sir. Always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for taking time.
Pleasure.